Let's have a look at how we do this S-batching of a shell script to start a job on the cluster. So in module 2 we were told to do that using this FastQC software. First of all, typically when we work on the cluster, we are logged in two different ways at the same time, I would say. That's the typical job setting. So we have RStudio login here, and we use RStudio for editing files. And sometimes we run RCode as well, but even if we don't run RCode, we still use RStudio as an editor. And then we need this terminal window, because even if RStudio also has a terminal window here, I would say don't make a habit of using this. The reason is it doesn't really behave as a terminal window should. In most cases it works fine, but in some cases it doesn't. And then you are sort of stuck there. So make a habit of using an ordinary terminal window, either using MOBA Xterm as I do here to get it, or PuTTY if you are also on a Windows computer, or if you are on a Mac, you use the terminal app, right? But it looks like this anyway, right? It may not have black background, but apart from that, it's a terminal window with where we have the command line, right? And now I'm logged in on my as a user here, as a BIN310 user. So if I list the content of this home directory of my, you can see I have some files and a couple of folders here. The folders are listed in blue, and the files in white, like this, right? And if I go over to RStudio here, I can see the exact same files and folders here. So these are just two different windows into the same world, right? This is my home folder on Orion. So if I delete a couple of files, these old log files here, you can delete. This Jupyter Hub log file, you can see the new one is growing. This one you should not delete while you are running RStudio. But the old ones you can delete, and then we can just hook them off like here. Let me delete one of them, the first one, and then press the delete button here. And then I go back here and do an ls, and I can see that now there's one file less here, right? Or I can delete it from up here. Which one is it? It's the one ending with 54. This is the command for deleting something in Unix, right? rm for remove. And then I type dup and tab to fill in as much as possible. And then it should be the one who is 8, and then tab. That's the file I want to delete now. Zup, there it's gone. And then I go over here, and then I have to update my file folder. It doesn't update all the time. So now you can see this file is gone here as well. So this is important that you realize that these are just two different windows into the same folder, you could say, or the same network, right? The cluster, the Orion computing cluster. So now I want to make a folder called module 2 here. I do it in my command line. You can also do it here. You can make a new folder like this, right? But I prefer to do it here now. Make a new director, mkdir. It's the command for this, module 2. And now if I list here, I can see the module 2 was created, and I go over here and update. Yeah, it's here as well. So now I move down to this folder here, module 2, and I also do it here by just clicking. And this is empty, of course, because it's newly made, so there's nothing there. Here is where we want to make our first shell script now. And how do we do that? Well, we as I said, we use RStudio as an editor. So I go here, File, New File, and I choose Text File. Text file, not RScript. Like this. Then I get a blank file here. And then I go to, I either start typing in, or as in this particular case, I have everything here, so I can just copy from this one, copy like that, and I go over here and put it in here. Paste. Like this. So this is just a simple text editor, right, in RStudio. And now you need to save this. Notice everything that is in red here is always unsaved, and there's a star behind as well. So I need to save it now. Save as. And now you should be very careful where you save it, right? Because now I want this is the assign. No, this is not where I want to save this. Look at the path here. Where is my file saved? I want to save it in this new module 2 folder that I just created. And then I need to go one step up, right? From where I was in this assignment 1 folder. But I want down here as well now. So I double click on this one. And now you can see the path is correct. My home folder and module 2. And here I gave it a name. And I have a habit, this is just a habit of mine. All the shell scripts, I always start the file name with the word shell script. And then underscore, and then I try to give it a name that describes what it's doing. And this one is running fastqc. That's the point of this shell script, right? And now it's important that you add the ending .sh. It's not like it will not work without this ending, because there is no link between file names and file content in Unix. Like you are used to in Windows or Mac, all the Word fields end by .doc, right? All PDF files end with .pdf and so on. This is no rule here. And it's actually not a rule in those systems either, but they have been built to think so. So you can actually call your file exactly what you want, but it's a good idea to have this .sh extension. .sh. And let's see why. Because if I save it now, zap, notice how RStudio now started to color the code here. Because RStudio recognizes shell code. RStudio recognizes more than R code. It recognizes Python and C++, many programming languages, including shell. So it's at least it makes our shell scripts look prettier here in RStudio if you give them this extension .sh. Yeah, and I will not talk about the content of this shell script here now, because that's something you should read about in this module 2. So there's my terminal window. So now I should list here again and see, yeah, now my file is here, right? And we can see it here as well in this module 2. I am now in the module 2 folder, right? This lists where I am in the file tree. So how do I run this? How do I run this fastqc software? Here is the command for running it. But before we run it, we have to load the software, of course. And in order to run this in the Slurm queue on Orion, you also need this heading here. So the command for just entering this into the queue is sbatch. And then you simply type the name of the file. So just type the start of the name and use the tab button to fill in the rest. This is a very good habit, both in R and in shell. Type start of the file name and use the tab button to fill in the rest, because this is also a sort of a safeguarding against trying to run a file which is not there. If the file is not there, the tab will not work, right? It will not fill in the name of a file which is not there. So if you saved your file in a different folder somewhere else, and you think you have the file in this folder, and you try this, and it will not work, of course, because the file is not there. Always check that the file is there. do a ls to check that everything is where you think you have it. This is extremely important. So when you sbatch like this, you get just a short response here saying that this is the job idea of the job that now started. And if we want to look into the queue, this is the command sq. And this queue is long, right? There's a lot of users here running their softwares, always. So if you want to have only your username visible, you have to do like this and type -u and type your username after. And there it is. It's running. No, sorry. This is not me. And this is a problem. And because notice the user here is only, it doesn't show my whole username. And that's because the size of this field here, this is sort of a table, right? And the column width is too short to show the whole username because these usernames are too long. So actually, I have made a small video now after this one, showing how we can sort of repair this in a nice way. But first, let's see if something happened here. Did we get some results? Yes. And this, of course, you may not see your own name in the queue simply because this particular job is so small that it's finished after just a few seconds, right? So it may be that your job is already done when you look into the queue, right? And this was probably also the case here. So here we have some results. And if I go back here and update my RStudio folder, you will see the files here. And there are some zip files. We don't need them really because all we need is these HTML files. And in order to open and view them, you just click on it and then you select View in Browser like this. And then you can inspect these files. And I will not do that now, but this is how you do it. There should be two HTML files, right? One for the R1 file and one for the R2 file. The zip files contain exactly the same figures, you could say. In case you want to download and include these figures in some document, it might be in the second assignment. I think you will need that. So then you download open this archive here, and inside there are some I think some PDF files or something that you can include if you want to include some figure in your report. But that's how you make a shell script and run it on RStudio. On Orion. We use both RStudio and the terminal, and we constantly go back and forth between these two. So stay tuned for the small next video showing how we can fix this problem with the width of the table here. Let's have a look at how we can change the display of the queue on Orion that I mentioned in the previous video. So first of all, let me move back to my home folder. And I should say, if you want to just clean your terminal screen, Control L. Hold the Control button and L, and then you are cleaning the screen like this. Let's move to the home folder. You can just type CD and nothing, and you will be taken to your home folder, right? Print working directory. So this is where you need to be now. Let's list the content here, and we can see there the same thing we saw in the previous video. We have these folders and this Jupyter log file, Jupyter Hub log file. But actually there is more here in this folder. There are more files in this folder. If we go to the RStudio and go back to the home folder and one step up again here, you will at least see there is a file here, .rhistory, right? Which is also listed by RStudio. Why didn't we see it here? And this is because files starting with a dot are considered hidden files. in Unix. So when you type ls, you don't list them. But you can list them by typing the -a option to ls. Then you also display the hidden files. And look, there's many of them. Many more than what RStudio is listing. So RStudio doesn't really list all the hidden files. It only lists its own hidden file, you could say. The RHistory file. And it's there, you can see it here. But there's obviously many more here. And also folders, right? Hidden folders. These are existing folders, but you don't see them unless you use the -a option to ls. I like to display also with the -l option. Then you can type like this. Instead of typing two options like this, you can just type -a and l at the same time. And the difference is that now we get what we call the long format, which is more detailed, right? And this you recognize from Windows or Mac. You can display files in different ways, right? In a folder, either as just icons showing, or you can get a detailed listing of the content. So this is the same here. And this is very nice. I prefer this because now all the files and folders are listed out here. And you can also see how big they are. This is the size of them. You can also see the permissions of the files. And I will not talk about permissions now. Go back to this Linux course, you could say, in Module 1 to learn about permissions. But I could just mention that all the files you make on Orion are by default readable to everyone else. So don't put any secrets on Orion, because the files you make there will by default be readable to everyone else. You can turn it off, right? You can turn off the permissions for others, so you can have secrets there, but then you have to make sure you do that. I just mentioned it. We will not waste time on that now. Let me show you this file. This is a hidden file called .bashrc. This is the one we will look into now and make some changes to. And I should immediately say that you have to be very, very, very careful when you edit this file, because this file is read whenever you log in or create a new terminal on Orion. And if you make something stupid inside this file, it could be really dramatic. It may not be possible for you to log in anymore. So be very, very careful to do things properly as I explain here now. Don't start experimenting with the content of this file. We will add something to it and not change anything else. The problem is this hidden file cannot be opened in RStudio. RStudio will not open hidden files like this. So let me just click. If I go here and open files and I go to my home folder, you won't see it, right? You will not, and you can even type the name of it in here and it says it doesn't exist. We know it exists, but RStudio doesn't see it. So how can we actually edit this file? Well, one very useful trick is to do as follows. We copy the files, this file, we copy it to some other name, copy its content, right? Then we edit this other copy, and then once we are done with that, we copy that back to the original file name, right? So what I do now is I copy this file, the .bashrc, into a file that has the same name but without the dot in front. And this is important, right? This new file here now does not have a dot in front of it. So if I list now, we should see both the original bashrc here, .bashrc, and the copy, right? And this is also a good idea because now we don't edit the the sort of the real .bashrc. We just edit on a copy of it. And if something goes wrong, we always have the copy, right? So we can go back and do some changes. And this file we can now open in RStudio if we just refresh the file window. Here it is now. And I'm not sure we can just click on it. Yeah, we could. It doesn't have a file extension, right? So RStudio doesn't really know what type of file this is. It's just text file. And here is how it looks like. It doesn't contain very much. But please don't mess with what is in here. It could contain a lot, and if you have been using Unix for some time, you will probably add a lot of stuff to this file. It will also be updated by some software that you use from time to time. So it may not look entirely like this after some time, I'm sure. But let's see how we can add something here now. Because note, the last line here says user-specific aliases and functions. So here, below here, you can start adding your own things. Don't make any changes to whatever is before this comment here. And here we want to make some changes now. Let me go back to, I put out on the module 2 document. I updated the module 2 document, right? You must be aware since you are seeing this video here. So here is the actual text that we want to add to this bashrc file of ours. So I just copy this one, then I take it back here and paste it in here, like this. And what is this? What is it that we are doing here? We are making an alias. And that's just typically a shortcut for a long command in Unix. And here is the long command. You recognize the SQ, right? And here are some option -O. And here we now display which fields or which columns, you can say, in this queuing table that we want to display, and also the width of them, how wide they should be, right? So if you like, you can go and look at the manual pages for SQ, and you get an explanation for all this. But if you don't, you can just copy what I made here and put it into this file. And now, of course, we have to remember to save this file. Save. So that this new line here is registered. And the point is now that instead of the original SQ command, we can now use this very short one to display the queue on Orion after this has been registered. And then we will see that the size of these columns are wide enough to see our entire username. I think this is the one that it's 10 characters for user, right? So, okay, we saved the file. I save it again. No, it's already saved, right? Then I go back to my terminal window. Here it is. I list the content here. I want to make sure that this has now actually been updated. So let me just display its content. How do I do that? I use the cat. And now let me show you how do you copy and paste in a terminal window. You just drag your mouse over a file and nothing more. There is no copy and paste or Control V, Control C. This doesn't work in the terminal window. You just drag the file and it is copied. And now I go down here with my cursor and I right click on the mouse and it's pasted. So let me display the content of this file. This is how it looks like now. And now you can see this last line here was added, right? So this, what we see here now should be exactly the same thing as we see in RStudio, right? Exactly the same thing, except for the coloring. Okay, so then we have this file. updated this file without a dot, right? But the original one with the dot is still the same. Let's even have a look at it to see, like this. Yeah, there is no, after this line here, there was no text. So now I want to copy this bash rc to this one and overwrite the old content of this bash rc, right? So I do the opposite of what I did previously. Previously I copied from the dotted file to the undotted, then I changed the undotted, and now I want to copy that change back to the original one. So if I use the up arrow to just repeat the previous command. If I now look into this file again, you can see it has been changed. This last line is now added. So if I did nothing wrong now, hopefully I did nothing wrong now, then it should be working. But in order for this to be registered, you will have to restart. So if I type SQ here now, it's not a command, right? It doesn't find this command. And that's because the .bashrc file is only read at login, right? So you have to log in again, log out. Let me just end this session. Then I go back and start the session again, in with my password. Like this. Let me make and Control L to, and now I can run the SQ session like this. Yes, now it's working. So I can still run the old SQ, of course, the full SQ command, but now this short one works as well, and it displays in a slightly different way, the queue. First of all, it doesn't display all the columns because I selected some of them. I did not include all the columns in this alias statement. And those who are displayed with a wider text. So now if I use this one and look for my username, you will see that it's now displaying the whole username because this column has been made wider now. So now we can see that this Jupyter Hub, the RStudio over here, it's actually what we see here, is running on the computing node number 12, and it has been running for 1 hour and 20 minutes soon. And this, I am the owner of this running job. And here is the job ID. So this is actually all the information you need about the job, I think. That's why I made this alias a little bit shorter. So some of the columns you see if you do the original SQ are no longer contained here, but the listing is wider. Okay, before I finish this short video, let me show how we can kill a job. And now I want to kill my RStudio session. You can always do that from RStudio as well. Let me just indicate how you can do it. Because once you're done, you should actually kill your job and not just let it run until it's killed by itself, you could say. You can go back here in this Jupyter Lab, and then on the File, Hub Control panel, here is where you can stop your job anytime. But I will not do that now. I will do it from here, from the terminal instead, just to indicate how can we kill a job. Well, we use the S-cancel. And again, we can use this copy paste. This is the, you need the job ID, right? To kill a job, you need the job ID. And you're only allowed to kill your own jobs, of course. So now I highlighted this and I go down here and right click, and then it's copied. So what happens now if I do this, S-cancel, then I can run my SQ command again, and no, nothing is in the queue with my name tagged to it. And now RStudio stopped working actually. If you try to do something here now, it has been killed, right? And it says status code 405 return blah blah blah. It just means that this is now dead, right? So you can just click it down. Yeah, it says here server is now not running. You can restart it again, but usually you will dismiss and just leave the whole process. So I think the terminal window is sort of the central brain of our working towards Orion, and then RStudio is a little bit less important. RStudio also has a tendency of hanging and behaving strangely, so it's a good idea to know how you can actually kill it from the terminal window. The terminal window is the core, you could say. Right? This is something that should always this window you should always have to Orion. Okay,